Welcome to A River Between Chaos and Zen, the poetry podcast from Creative Actors Lab. My name is Max. Kelly sends her love as always. So as I'm doing research for this podcast, and then just my general love of poetry and my self education in my pursuit of my betterment of my self education of subjects that I love, like poetry. I came across a website, and I really need to reach out to these people, but it's called neuroticpoets.com. And I said, well, that's got my name written all over it. And but it actually talks about the link between creativity and madness. And one of the first poets that comes up is Lord Byron. And if you go onto Wikipedia, you can find out all of the debauchery and hilarity that he went through, and but just a lot of what came before all that, and why he probably did not have a whole lot of choice when it came to writing poetry. I think it's in a lot of cases people write poetry because if they don't, they're going to implode. Much in the same way that a lot of the old Delta blues players did. What they had was music and their voice, and their words and their heart. And it's what they had to help them get through their life and their difficulties and their mental health struggles that we all, to one degree or other, go through. Some of us worse than others. I personally have been diagnosed with a few. One of which is CPTSD, complicated PTSD, because apparently, regular PTSD just wasn't good enough, and so I had to really go the extra mile. And borderline obsessive compulsive. I've dealt with any amount of depression and anxiety. I once had a therapist ask me to say, would it be fair to say that you are hypervigilant? And I would say, oh yeah, and it's staying that way. But I just know that for myself, poetry is one of those things, just especially in the writing of it, that it's just been the difference between soothing my soul enough to keep going on in life or not. And I start to read things by Lord Byron, and they go into Mary Shelley, Edgar Allan Poe, of course, and Emily Dickinson, who I want to do a future podcast about Emily Dickinson. Sylvia Plath. My God, that woman was just above and beyond genius. I'm speechless. But when it comes to Lord Byron, I don't want to go into a lot of his history here, but because you can go on Wikipedia and get all this stuff. But it was George Gordon Byron. He apparently was born with a lame foot, and once upon a time in his formative years, and he only lived to be 36 years old, but there was a girl he was infatuated with, and she referred to him as that lame boy. And that just doesn't, when you're a sensitive soul as it is, and then you hear other people speaking about you in that way, that is going to do nothing but send you farther down the rabbit hole. He was an extremely, apparently a very, very fragile person. He was, apparently he'd gone through eating disorders, and the whole sexual thing. I mean, he was obviously bisexual, There was a thing about him having an affair with a half-sister, which in the time was very scandalous, which would still be very scandalous. But he lived from 1788 to 1824, and even then, and even now, so much of what he did would certainly raise a lot of eyebrows and get a lot of media attention, very negative media attention. I think this is a guy who, if he had grown up in the time of TikTok and social media, he would just be lambasted and screwed. But I want to read a few of his things, because just as I read about him, and some of the escapades that he went on were, it brings to mind people like Oscar Wilde, Aleister Crowley. I can see although it's not the same thing, it's of a different social class, but there's a certain amount of Charles Bukowski type of things going on. There's some Marilyn Manson type of imagery going on in some of his escapades, and and just he lived a very crazy and very unhappy sort of existence, and I look at him and people like him, and people I have personally known who have gone through their mental health struggles, and when you would ask on some of these people, why have they not gotten some kind of mental help or mental health help or some kind of counseling or something? I've had a gentleman who's very, very, very troubled person, basically say he tried to go for help many times over, and he said, it doesn't exist for people like me. And so he just tried to go through life doing the best he could, and why, just in the past few days of reading some of Lord Byron, why do I think Lord Byron may have felt the same way. There's a few of his things here, and I will really try to make some do some justice to this, but just you hear the poetry, and then you hear the person that it came from, and how do they meet. This is called She Walks in Beauty. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright. Meet her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven's to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace, which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek, and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. This is called So We'll Go No More A-Roving. So we'll go no more a-roving so late into the night, though the heart be still as loving and the moon be still as bright. For the sword outwears its sheath, and the soul outwears the breast, and the heart must pause to breathe, and love itself have rest. Though the night was made for loving, and the day returns too soon, and yet we'll go no more a-roving by the light of the moon. This one is called When We Two Parted. When we two parted in silence and tears, half broken-hearted to sever for years, the pale grew thy cheek and cold, colder than kiss. Truly that hour foretold sorrow to this. The dew of the morning sunk chill on my brow. It felt like the warning of what I feel now. Thy vows are all broken, and light is thy fame. I hear thy name spoken, and share in its shame. They name thee before me, a knell to mine ear. A shudder comes o'er me. Why wert thou so dear? They know not I knew thee, who knew thee too well. Long, long shall I rue thee, too deeply to tell. In secret we met, in silence I grieve, in thy heart, that thy heart could forget, thy spirit deceive. If I should meet thee after long years, how should I greet thee? With silence and tears. And I'm even remembered actually David Bowie doing the video for Blue Jean. The character he was portraying was called Screamin' Lord Byron. And he was a contemporary of Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley, and and he was around the time of when Mary Shelley was writing Frankenstein, and it's very, very goth, very, very early goth, and part of me, even though I don't dress the part, part of me is a goth. I've known a lot of goth people, and one thing that is very one thread that runs through is in the goth culture is just art, but in particular poetry. And goths can look like some pretty scary people, but talk to them. There's some very tender hearts underneath all that black makeup. I want to finish with this one, and I'm going to do my absolute best to do justice to this this next 3.5 pages. This is called "There Was a Sound of Revelry by Night." There was a sound of revelry by night, and Belgium's capital had gathered then. Her beauty and her chivalry, and bright the lamps shone o'er fair women and brave men. 1,000 hearts beat happily, and when music arose with its voluptuous swell, soft eyes looked love to eyes which spake again, and all went merry as a marriage bell. But hush, hark, a deep sound strikes like a rising knell. Did ye not hear it? No, 'twas the wind, or the car rattling in the stony street, or on the dance. Let the joy be unconfined, no sleep till morn, when youth and pleasure meet, to chase the glowing hours with flying feet. But hark, that heavy sound breaks in once more, as if the clouds its echo would repeat, and nearer, clearer, deadlier than before. Arm, arm, it is the cannon's opening roar. Within a windowed niche of that high hall, St. Brunswick's fated chieftain, he did hear that sound, the first amidst the festival, and caught its tone with death's prophetic ear. And when they smiled because he deemed it near, his heart more truly knew that peal too well, which stretched his father on a bloody bier, and roused the vengeance blood alone could quell. He rushed into the field, and foremost fighting fell. Ah, then and there was hurrying to and fro, and gathering tears and tremblings of distress, and cheeks all pale, which but an hour ago blushed at the praise of their own loveliness. But there were sudden partings, such as press the life out young hearts, and choking sighs which ne'er might be repeated. Who would guess if evermore should meet those mutual eyes, since upon the night so sweet such awful morn could rise? And there was mounting in hot haste the steed, the mustering squadron, and the clattering car went pouring forward with impetuous speed, and swiftly forming in the ranks of war, and the deep thunder peal and peal afar, and near the beat of the alarming drum roused up the soldier ere the morning star, while thronged the citizens were with terror numb, or whispering with white lips, the foe, they come, they come. And wild and high the Camerons gathering rose, the war note of Lochiel, which Albion's hills have heard, and heard too have her Saxon foes. How in the noon of night that Pilbroch thrills, savage and shrill, but with a breath which fills their mountain pipes, so fill the mountaineers with a fierce native daring which instills the stirring memory of 1,000 years, and Evans, Donald's fame rings in each clansman's ears. And Ardennes waves above them her green leaves, dewy with nature's teardrops as they pass, grieving if aught inanimate e'er grieves, or the unreturning brave, alas. Ere evening, to be trodden like the grass, which now beneath them, but above all shall grow in its next verdure, when this fiery mass of living valor, rolling on the foe, and burning with high hope, shall moulder cold and low. Last noon beheld them full of lusty life. Last eve in beauty's circle proudly gay, the midnight brought the signal sound of strife. The morn the marshalling in arms the day, the battle's magnificently stern array. The thunder clouds close o'er it, which when rent the earth is covered thick with other clay, which her own clay shall cover, heaped and pent, rider and horse, friend, foe, in one red burial blent. Their praise is hymned by loftier harps than mine, yet one I would select from that proud throng, partly because they blend me with his line, and partly that I did his sire some wrong, and partly that night names will hallow song, and his was of the bravest, and when showered the death bolts deadliest, the thinned files along, even where the thickest of war's tempest lowered, they reach no nobler breast than thine, young gallant Howard. There have been tears and breaking hearts for thee, and mine were nothing. I had such to give but when I stood beneath the fresh green tree, which living waves where thou didst cease to live, and saw around me the wide field revive with fruits and fertile promise, and the spring come forth her work of gladness to contrive. with all her reckless birds upon the wing. I turn from all she brought to those she could not bring. I turn to thee, to thousands, of whom each and one as all a ghastly gap did make in his own kind and kindred, whom to teach forgetfulness were mercy for their sake. The archangel's trump, not glories, must awake those whom they thirst for, though the sound of fame may for a moment soothe. It cannot slake the fever of vain longing, and the name so honored but assumes a stronger, bitterer claim. They mourn, but smile at length, and smiling mourn. The tree will wither long before it fall. The hull drives on through mast and sail be torn. The roof tree sinks, but moulders on the hull. In massy hoariness, the ruined wall stands when its wind-worn battlements are gone. The bars survive the captains they enthrall. The day drags through, the storms keep out the sun, but thus the heart will break, yet brokenly live on. Even as a mirror, which the glass in every fragment multiplies and makes 1,000 images of one that was, the same, and still the more it breaks. And thus the heart will do, which not forsakes, living in shattered guise, and still, and cold, and bloodless, with its sleepless sorrow aches, yet withers on till all without is old, showing no visible sign, for such things are untold. And I'm going to stop there. Before I say, for those of you who are listening to this on just the audio version of it, I just want to point out I'm going to hold my hand up to the camera right now, if you can see this, but for those of you who can't see it, on the middle finger of my left hand I have a tattoo of a semicolon, and if you don't know what that means, I would say Google semicolon tattoo project. And I swore up and down for all the tattoos I had that I would never, ever, 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 ever get a tattoo on my hand. And lo and behold, here we are. And the reason I got this is because I've known a lot of people and I've been in a lot of situations, and they're going to know what this means. And God damn it, these people need to know that they are not alone. As always, thank you for listening. I hope this helps. If not, I hope it was at least entertaining. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way.